We're in a good place. All right.
Thanks for knowing.
Did that just start?
Sorry?
Did that program just start?
So,
Will you click this, please?
I don't know what that format is. If any of that question before we.
You want the Q&A now or later?
Oh, no, go, let's just go ahead and we'll all go through once and then we'll open up to conversation and question.
All right. My name is Jeanine Valadez and lived here since 1989. It's been a tough road to hoe. One of the reasons I'm really involved in the museum is because of that experience. Our community has changed over time. And that applies also to our library. So I'm a library commissioner now. I've spent the last 4 years having been a Parks and Rec commissioner. That's the Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Cultural Commission. And that last part, the Cultural Commission part, is a brand new charter for that commission, and it's still formulating how to handle that. But that idea and that concept is near and dear to my heart, and it spread right over into the library commission. For me, I became very interested in that because I'm a Rotarian, and through that work, I decided to, from the beginning, when I joined in 2021, to focus on early childhood literacy. So literacy is extremely important to me. It's often the bridge that can cross all ethnic and cultural boundaries if it's treated right and applied right. So the goal for me was to continue that work through a more institutional scenario, such as the Library Commission. This commission is kind of different from all the other commissions in the number of additional stakeholders that it takes to actually run our library. Our local library isn't really ours, it's counties. And we're part of a system of libraries. Not all the libraries in Santa Clara County are part of that district, but we are. So we have 2 branches here. How many people know where the 2 branches are? Everybody know? What's the one in the south called? Woodlands. Well done. All right. So a lot of people don't know that. Anyways, it takes a lot of stakeholders to run our library. So there's the district, and there's also the Friends of the Library. You know, their job is really to raise money to basically use the selling of books to raise money to help programs at the library. And you've also got the library endowment. I thought Fred's not going to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll talk very briefly to that. Steal her thunder. The library endowment is enormously important because because of their own self-standing nonprofit, they can go ahead and raise money for capital projects, to increase our collections, to deal with infrastructure. And they're very successful and very, we've got a committed set of donors. The museum should have them down. Anyway. And then there's the Library Joint Powers Authority. And that's a tax district. So you guys don't know what a tax district is? Basically a unit, an agency of government that's allowed to go ahead and charge taxes, and in this case, parcel taxes. So if any of you are homeowners or landowners, you pay parcel tax to help provide funding for capital projects and other benefits to the library. And our tax district covers Los Altos and Los Altos. So you all pay into the library, may as well use it. And then finally, we've got the, I think that I covered it. Yeah, I did cover it. Well, but then we've got patrons and donors and residents, and you all through either signing up for a library card, donating money, participating as a volunteer. You also help the library work. So what drew me to this was that I love the fact that all of these puzzle pieces have to work together. It's a tremendous way to understand county politics, local politics, how money moves in and out of systems. And I was just fascinated by that. And then within that whole puzzle is my love of literacy for children, adults, and everybody else. And so these days, libraries also play a pivotal role because they provide so much more than books. They provide everything depending on the scale in the city, county. They provide childcare, they provide educational programs, they provide all kinds of media, computer time, late access for kids that need computer access but their parents, are working or whatever. Sometimes shuttle services, all of these benefits. So I believe very strongly in the library's concept. I was allowed to be in 3 places when I was a child by my mother. the sports gym or field, number 1, the library, number 2, or museum, number 3. And I'm involved in all 3 of those things in my personal life. So it was a very pivotal thing for me. I think it's gotten me farther than maybe my regular brain would have gotten me. It was my ability to build those connections and tie things together in my life. So the challenges are, I knew I just became the library commissioner. For me, the challenge will be to understand where the power is, where the power isn't, what my role will be, and how I can contribute in this large maze of interlocking pieces. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mehruss. I'm currently the chair of the planning commission. I've been doing it for 8 years, so this is my 8th and final year. I am an architect and a real estate developer, so that I guess is what pulled me in to want to join the planning commission. I'm born and raised in Los Altos, so the chance to give back to my community, I think really interested me, and the idea that I can make an impact really is what kind of pulled me in. And so, yeah, the purpose of the planning commission is to review and recommend items to the city council. So as it pertains to planning. So anything from development projects that are proposed in the city to updating zoning code amendments, to creating new ordinances like the ADU ordinance or objective design standards, and then kind of fulfilling state requirements like the housing. So it encompasses a lot of different things, but I think in my opinion, I think the main purpose is to just continue to progress the city forward. I think that's really the goal, is that we don't want the city to become stagnant. So we kind of just want to keep pushing it and evolving it. And yeah, I think the biggest challenges, I think, over the next few years for the planning commission, I think is just kind of updating and refining our zoning code and our general plan. That's a really big item over the next few years. And I think also it's about trying to make sure that with all this new development that's being proposed, that as a city, we are kind of evolving and changing kind of the requirements that we have, and making sure that we don't block housing per se, but that we allow it to kind of flourish and continue, but we also respect kind of the residents and their kind of ideas for what they want the city to be, and not to disrespect the values of the city. So it's a very, you kind of have to thread the needle. It's a very delicate balance of trying to respect both. But I think as long as you have kind of the city as your North Star, so to speak, then I think it'll guide you as you move forward if you join the planning commission. So yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello everyone, Scott Pietka. Good to be on this side of the panelist discussion. I'm currently the chair of the Complete Streets Commission. I think most chairs are positions started in the September, November. That's my beginning, I guess, or middle of my 3rd year. I was a interim commissioner, so I'll have a 3-year term. Should I choose to continue and apply to be a commissioner again, it would be under 4 years. Actually, instead of rambling through a few pieces of what the Complete Streets Commission does, I'll just summarize it with some notes. So the commission, like all commissions, advises on how to design and improve streets so they're safe and accessible for everyone, which includes people for walking, biking, driving, using transit and multimodal mobility, so like scooters and bikes, things like that. What we do is we review transportation projects and policies. So we work with the city engineers and the traffic engineers to review their plans, bring most importantly public back to the conversation, which I think is one of the most important aspects for our commission. I'm sure for all commissions it's really important, but if you design city streets, change things without people's input first, it often leads to rework and frustrate individuals, like for a long time, speed bumps on Cuesta, or redesign parking and bike lanes on the Jordan, or many other things. But ultimately,
before your time.
Before my time. change that. Other big piece of our work is we help implement the Complete Streets Master Plan. This is a planning document created years ago, 5 years ago exact. And our job is to oversee the principles that the city laid out for us to implement. There's a lot of different aspects to that, whether it's the safe routes to school, which is a big piece of what we help oversee. We make sure that the city planning and engineers focus when we do resurfacing, remilling, and overlay on our city streets, that we're ultimately focusing on the safe routes to schools as a target area for improvements, which might be just mean restriping for lines for safety, making sure that the roads interconnect, or safety lanes for kids on bikes or walking to our schools. So there's a bunch of different pieces to make sure that we're looking at guiding principles, but ultimately kind of what is the truth on the ground when we're looking at how we plan to develop these plans for everyone. And then lastly, I think, yeah, that's it. Where I see my role, I guess I'm really passionate about public transit. I work in the geospatial industry, and which is maps, GIS. So I follow my passion in the workspace and life space, brought it here to the city, which I feel lucky to do. As of now, I think the biggest challenge for our commission is changing the model that the city works with the commission itself. We'll be presenting to the city council on March 10th, our 2026 work plan, and in that is the kind of looking at a new framework for how we engage the public. Oftentimes the city brings us stuff to review and approve and gets feedback on their design proposals, where the commission currently, or a few of us, are trying to kind of create a framework that ultimately says, engage the public first, getting feedback, create designs, and then iterate on that, which is a slight shift from the, we'll show you what we're going to do, and you can tell us how we want to modify it. So it creates kind of a frustrating process, I would say, and maybe not the results that the citizens expect, right? Which is something that people need to be engaged. This will be very important for San Antonio's redesign. The city got a grant for $8 million and change, and you'll hear a lot about in the future. It's already begun, but ultimately we'll be responsible for the process of obtaining feedback from the public and then working on these plans to help restructure our road from El Camino up to Pietka Expressway. Anything else that I needed to address? You had a few prompts for us that I'm trying to recall.
I think just better ways for community members to engage as it stands now.
Yeah, if you're not following any of the 9 commissions that exist, you're part in, I guess, front doors that kind of dictates what's before you, right? Like what you care about, what's happening in your neighborhood. But you could sign up for the monthly agenda items that get sent out. So that will tell you what's happening in the event you care what's happening on the complete streets of planning commission, the library, or any other commission for that matter. There's 2 ways to engage always, which is send an email to the city staff, which then gets forwarded to us in advance so we get a chance to read the details. And then secondly, you can attend and provide public comments. And that is an effective mechanism for the commissioners to hear what citizens actually want to have happen and take that input, which is important. And if you want to get involved, any of our commissions meet once a month. 10 times a year. We don't meet every month. We don't meet in the summertime and over the holidays. So those will be the times to see if it interests you and if you wanted to be a part of it.
I think that's really important, that those that are considering serving on commissions attend some of those commission meetings, city council meetings, etc. Right? So that we get an understanding of what the commission actually has. Sure, Jeanine.
And you can, not all commissions meet 10 times a year. For example, library only meets 6. And so if that's a factor for you, they meet at different times in the evening. So look at them, and you can always watch any commission meeting on Zoom, even after the fact. They're there for you. So if you don't have time to attend, if you're in study mode, then just watch the videos and you'll get a flavor for the chemistry of the commission, the kinds of topics they bring up, and then definitely sign up for all of the agendas.
Question?
A commission question, because there's multiple people. You didn't mention, you talked about how we may have interest for a commission, but you didn't talk about how the process is for deciding if there's one spot and there's 5 people who are interested. Who exactly is doing the analysis and
The city council, is responsible for reviewing the applications, then ultimately interviewing the applicants, and then they choose. It's in a public forum, so if there's 5 seats and 5 people, then likely we choose all 5 people, but if there's 1 seat and 5 people, then.
Not always, they will leave spots open.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There you go.
So if you've made it as commissioners because they want you, which is awesome.
Yeah, you were serving at the pleasure of the city council. You're doing this work for the council. So it's their choice.
Okay. Mark Rogge, I'm a civil engineer, and I serve on the board of the Los Altos Stage Company. And of course, why would I do that? Well, I have worked in municipal management for over 30 years for various cities around here. I've been a city engineer, been a public works director, project management director, all of those kind of things, and built a lot of stuff. You may know about Shoreline at Mountain View and Rainstorm House out up there. I did the library in Mountain View, library in Valadez, and a couple other things like that. I love historic buildings, but having gone to all of these meetings over my career, which is probably even more than Larry Lang, you know, he goes to a lot. I see people coming before the council with really legitimate questions and answers, and very frequently not being effective in how they bring it to the council, or the way they ask was the right body. And so I've always been interested in trying to help that kind of thing out. But my biggest thing is that I love being part of a community and love being part of a downtown. And I think a downtown needs to have a really good library, needs to have a really good theater, and, you know, great shops and local people that are interested. We have something very unique in this city, is that we have a lot of the owners of the downtown who actually live here. And that's rare, I can tell you. It's very rare.
Local museum.
Yeah. Nothing better than a historic society, absolutely. So the theater was one of those things that I was asked to work on, the new theater group to look into. The council asked us to look into a new theater. Well, they did that because there was a study that was done actually in 1991, downtown study, that said a new theater would be the best thing to put downtown to revitalize downtown. Later on in 2018, I think it's 2018, they did the downtown vision plan. And one of the things it recommended was a new theater downtown. And, you know, I'd like to go to the theater, but, you know, you go to the theater, it'd be nice to park once, go out to dinner, go to the theater, and go home, as opposed to parking downtown, running across San Antonio, and then back again. So then you never go back to the downtown for a little nightcap or a dessert or whatever. So, you know, reducing parking and that sort of thing. But one of the things I brought before the city council, a little tongue in cheek, was, how many of you ever been to the Los Altos Stage Company, the Bus Farm Theater? Okay. So one of the things I asked the city council is, I think it really comes down to is, do the people of Los Altos deserve to have indoor plumbing? You all probably know what I mean if you've been there. We have an outhouse, essentially. It's a Parks outhouse. It was a bus barn. It was built in 1940. It was renovated later on. And it's small, it's about 100 seats. Wonderful performances. If you haven't gone to the theater, go to the theater. We do fun, upbeat stuff. And our artistic director likes to also do some serious stuff. So if you're going to go the first time, go to one of the fun ones. But it's a great theater. It's very local. There's 2 pieces of the theater. There's the regular theater at night for adults, mainly. We say it's adults because it's really not a children's theater. Because sometimes there is a theme that's not appropriate for kids. But we also run a children's theater. And that's great because there's an awful lot of interest in jobs in youth in the theater. lighting, electronics, sound, all of those things. And they get a great kick out of that. And it's a really good learning experience to learn to act and work with others. So, which is kind of what the council's trying to do, is learn to act and work with others. And so it's a great thing. If you want to be involved in the theater, the board of directors, let me know, or anyone else on the board know. We are not selected by the city council because we're our own nonprofit organization. Kind of a little more like the wonderful museum here. So that's our biggest concern right now is we've done a study that shows we could definitely support a larger theater. Instead of 100 seats, about 160. The economy of scale works out better. You pay the same price to put on the play, but you get more ticket revenue. And you can do it more professionally. And one of the things we're seeing is with the kids that come in and learn about theater arts is they're learning about theater arts that are a little antiquated. We'd rather they could learn about theater arts that are today in a modern facility. And I think the Los Altos residents do deserve indoor plumbing. So that's why I'm part of the stage company. And it's kind of a fun group. If you haven't been there, not only the plays, but if you only go to one thing, go to the Follies. It's an absolute a lot of fun. So I invite y'all to come on down, and want to know anything else about the theater, let me know.
So I'll start with one question that I think is just a little more general for all of you, whether you're commissioners or your nonprofit organizations. How do you weigh community input, your own ideas, input from council, et cetera, when you're making decisions as a part of your organization?
Sorry, before you answer that, this is Nicole and we're locked out downstairs. Do you mind someone letting us in?
Before you answer that, show of hands again, how many are on the commission? Or have served on a commission if they aren't now? So all of you have served on it without this commission. So how many times in the commissions, whether you meet 6 times, 8 times, 10 times, how often does somebody from the community actually show up to be part of your commission?
Depends on the topic.
Every-
Dog park,
every-
hundreds. Art decision, 1 or 2. The orchard, 100.
Okay.
It just really depends.
And how about the rest of you? Except
Financial commission is very dry and boring, so hardly get any visitors. If they do, we bring them tea and coffee, you know. Something else.
Okay, it depends on the agenda item. If it's just a kind of a zoning code amendment, then probably no one will show up. But the 8-story building a couple months ago, I think we had 30, 40.
Okay. Anybody else? So it's comparable, so it just depends on the issue.
Yeah.
But obviously that means that people are paying attention to the issues then.
Sometimes it's the same people.
Yeah.
What's really refreshing to us is when people that we haven't seen that are coming, and I don't want to characterize them always this way, but more than often they're coming with the same message, but we hear a new perspective. That is very stimulating and meaningful to a commission. So you folks, whether you're on that side of the dais or this side of the dais, new ideas and new opinions and different viewpoints are really important to commissions, because then we can relay those to the council and then they feel also vitalized.
I would also say you have to kind of weigh what you're hearing from the public.
Right.
Because it's a self-selecting group that will come
People
down
who are really angry
and
show
talk.
up.
Yeah,
Not the people who are happy.
right. Well, and you know, everyone believes that they represent themselves plus their entire community, and that may or may not be true. And if there's 5 really passionate people in the audience, it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't 50 really passionate people that are in the opposite direction. So I think, you know, the purpose of all of these commissions and councils, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to hear testimony, hear what people want to say, consider that in your deliberation, but not necessarily say, well, so-and-so says no to this, so I guess we can't do it. You have to kind of say, well, okay, we heard your thought, we heard your concern. In all things in consideration, we still think we should go through with this, and that's what you should do. And so but public input is very important. There are frequently times when someone will bring up something that everybody goes, oh, aha, we didn't think of that one.
Like the height of these people, of course.
One thing to keep in mind is that the protocol of the analysis commission that run is that there is a small window when public citizens are allowed to sort of have a comment period, but they're not allowed to participate in the discussion and the functioning of the commission. So once that 10, 15 minutes or whatever, however they show up, they can make a point and then they have to sit down. They can't be involved in how the commission is working. So if somebody's very serious about something, then it's better for the direct to council or come to a council meeting where they can actually speak to the council and have time. So the commission is actually good for people to actually hear the outcome or listen to it or participate, but not to participate. So commissions, usually people don't come to participate.
Sorry, I wanted to add to that. I think for me, there's two aspects. The first one is kind of receiving public comment, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen items like the downtown park that just happened a week ago, and so many public comments were about how we should just deny the project and not even do the project. And to be honest, that's not going to happen. So these residents that are spending 2 minutes or 3 minutes of their public speaking time, to me, it's a waste of that time, because instead they should, if they don't like the project, which is fine, they're allowed to not like the project, but they can give feedback and actual constructive criticism about how to get the project that they want, rather than just saying, we don't want the project at all, because then that's going to make them more upset and it's the same people that do that, where they just don't want the project at all, and they feel like they're never heard. But the problem is that they're asking for the wrong thing, because a lot of these projects have to get approved or they're already approved. So that's one part. The other part is, as a commissioner, there's so many times where I come into a meeting and I think that the public is going to think a certain way, and it's completely opposite from what I thought, and vice versa. So I think it's important to not be influenced by 1 or 2 residents that might be really upset about something. Like I said before, over the last 8 years, what I've realized is you kind of have to keep the city as your main focus. It's almost like the city is a person, and whatever is best for the city, because residents may leave, they may move away, commissioners may move away, but the city is always going to be here. And so it's really about what are the residents in 20 years going to think about the decisions that we're making now. So that's kind of what I try to do.
For me, there's also this, and I agree with everything that's been said so far. When it comes to the issue of discussion, when you come in for your 1, 2, or 3 minutes and you make your pitch, and then there's no conversation to be had, it can feel very stifling, especially if you hear the council subsequently go back and forth in their discussion to make their decision, and you're like, oh, I could have added another point, and you can't. So being a commissioner, this is how I deal with that. I recognize that is a limitation, because I make a lot of public comments, so I know what it feels like, where you don't have that other opportunity and you have to wait a whole other cycle or it's the discussion's done. What I try to do as a commissioner is if somebody comes in, especially when time is limited, we have to go 2 minutes, this for 1 minute, then I understand that they're probably not going to get their whole story across. Or they're coming, as Mehruss says, they don't understand that those monies cannot be used for anything but a park. So we can't go do sewers, we can't do it. But it's clear that the audience doesn't understand that. So what I will do is, as I'm doing discussion with my fellow commissioners, I will slip that in. Well, since we all know that, and then I'll say the thing, and as long as they believe me, I've just educated them and they understand why we're not going to be able to follow their comment, because we're not legally allowed to, or there are state laws that override So as a commissioner, you have the opportunity to educate your public in the course of having your discussion to get your actions done. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years as a commissioner, that is a way that I can help the public, especially when they're really frustrated, because they can get very frustrated if you're ignoring them. And I know how that feels. I've been on that. You're ignoring me. And so I think that when there are laws or pre-existing conditions or simple facts that they don't understand that will govern the decision and they're not thinking about that, you can inform them of that and maybe it'll calm them down a little bit.
Remember, if you want to make a comment, if it's not important enough to sit down and write a little email or a letter, then maybe it's not important enough for you to go down to the meeting. Going down to the meeting is really good because you get to see the interaction of everybody and you get to understand the nuances of what the council or the commissioners are saying. But really, if you're that, if it's that important to you, if you write a letter, first, it becomes a public document. It's a matter of record. Second, most council members and commissioners will in fact read those. And if they can read those in advance, it may in fact alter their thinking on it and say, well, I thought this way, but I'm getting a lot of input this way. Let me look into that. It doesn't mean they're going to necessarily just, be swayed, but let me look into that point. That's a good point. So that is so much more effective. And then you can get up and say, the points in my letter were A, B, and C. Please consider those. I'll give you one other thing that I've seen over 30 years of watching councils do this. It's not effective. I've been living in this community for 30 years, okay? What are you trying to tell the council? What does that mean? Does that mean you're more important than the person that moved in 2 years ago? Does that mean that you have some special rights? Does that mean you're not paying your fair share of property taxes? What are you trying to say? And it seems like that means something, and yet it's kind of wasted time on your 1 minute or 2 minutes.
Yes.
Now, if you say, I've lived here for many years and I've seen this happen, and I've seen this happen, therefore I want this, that's relevant. But a lot of times you just say, I've lived here for 30 years, so you better listen to what I have to say, which does not mean anything to anybody. And it is possibly offensive to people who've only lived here for 10 years. So, just a consideration.
Questions?
Just a comment. I see it. My response initially was, maybe they're just saying I'm an invested partner. But when you went further,
yeah,
then I can see how perhaps just explain, like I have seen such and such in these 30 years.
Drive it home.
Yes.
Yes. Drive it home. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless.
I'm going to add something else really quickly to feedback that we received in advance via email, which is the most useful. It gives us a chance to do research. Oftentimes, people say, oh, I want bike lanes on this whole street, remove parking in this whole area by the school. Okay, but one, is it even possible? Two, do the road geometries allow for this? Three, is there state law that would even allow this to occur as well? So in the end, I'm able to understand this, look at it, analyze the street, use Google Street View or something else, go there, look at street traffic flows, and other commissioners do as well. So then we actually have an understanding. So I guess we're repeating ourselves slightly, but in the end, having prior notice on the topic, if you're coming to give a at-large comment that's something that's not on the agenda, is the most effective way, as for a city council meeting or for a commission.
Hi, thank you. You guys talk a lot about, people giving comments and not understanding the nuance or having misinformation and your ability to kind of maybe course correct in the meeting. Other than in those meetings, is there a way to proactively push out information that you utilize? I'm thinking like the town crier or social media, or are you allowed to even push out information when you know that the public has a misunderstanding?
So I can speak up. So this is kind of really important, that we felt on the commission. I was in the financial system for 10 years. It was important that people understand how much money you take in, how much money you
Is there
spend.
mic on?
So,
Gonna eat that much.
is that better?
Yeah.
So we created actually like almost a marketing brochure for the cities, which gets mailed out, I think it still does mailed out, although it's really also sent out. It sort of gives people in plain English, okay, this is how much we take in, this is what we spend on, this is what our reserves are, these are the kind of capital projects we do. It's very important that people understand really what the city can or cannot achieve or what it can do. I don't know how many of you know how much revenue the city. Anybody, any ballpark guess on how much revenue the city takes in every year?
6 million?
Sorry?
6 million thereabouts?
We're about a $70 million revenue.
70?
70. We spend roughly about 15 on running the business and about 20 on capital projects every year. What we do is that we spend a little bit less, so we, as by design, save about $2 to $5 million every year. And we put it into a pool for capital projects, which is a separate budget. We have over $100 million in there, but we have probably $300 million for capital projects, and that's where things like building a theater come in, because that would be a capital project. And that's how the community center was built. We used $55 million to build that building next door, and that was from the pool of money we had saved up. So when I think it's very important to sort of know your budget, because we're not Palo Alto. Mountain View's budget is probably 2.5 times our size. Sunnyvale's budget is 3 times our size. We are a city, when you compare to Saratoga, a little bit smaller than Menlo Park now, because Menlo Park has a lot of Facebook budget, and the money all comes from also the sources. I don't want to do all this, but this is sort of important. I think if you're involved in the city, you should know how the city can possibly live. We have about 300 people. I would say about 40% of the revenue is spent on policing. We do all our fire work by paying to the county, so we don't have our own fire department. That's always up for grabs because we pay a lot. We pay almost $9 million to the county for fire. So things like that are where majority of the budget is pretty much already spent. So we're talking about $2 to $5 million that we have spared every year that we accumulate for doing big projects. So when people have these grand ideas that we should build this or that, you're competing with probably a list of about $300 million worth of projects that have already been discussed and slated and reviewed by the council that are not done.
Let me make a comment about deliberative the deliberative process. You may or may not recognize this, but at least at a council meeting, it's a little different on commissions, but at a council meeting, the city council members are not to go into the meeting with a preconceived notion. They are not to go in with, I've made up my mind, this is what we're going to do. They are supposed to read the staff report. They are supposed to read letters that come in, comments that are made. They're supposed to ask questions of the staff and read the replies, because they may have a specific question that they didn't understand or that the council or the staff failed to put in the report. All of those things are okay. They are not to collaborate amongst themselves. They are not to meet outside of the public venue. And when they get there, they are not to have a preconceived idea of how they're going to vote. And so a lot of people say, well, are you going to vote this way? It would be inappropriate for a council member to say, yes, I'm going to vote for this item. He can say it looks promising, but he can't say, I want to vote for this item, because what he's supposed to do is, after hearing staff reports, and then after hearing comments from the public, and then after hearing deliberation, where they all talk to each other, they're then supposed to form their opinion and then vote on it. And that's somewhat upsetting to people, but it's what you want, because you don't want secret deals going on in back rooms. You don't want the council to come forward with an idea that they've already decided on and you don't mean anything coming to the council meeting or expressing yourself. They're supposed to deliberate and do it. So a lot of times council members will be seen as, well, he's a politician. He's just being evasive. He won't say one way or the other. Well, there may be a reason for that. So it's something to respect, because I think that process is really good in a democracy, so that we're not doing things under the table, you know? And then there's also the Brown Act, which is a whole other subject.
We did have a Brown Act contract. Jonathan Weinberg came in and spoke with everyone about the Brown Act. December? January? Go ahead, Jeanine.
So yes, the Brown Act applies, and the Brown Act applies completely as well in all shapes, ways, and forms to the commissions. Now, the two bodies do have the ability to call what are called study sessions, where open discussion can happen, but they're also Brown Acted venues. So it is important to know what you are allowed and not allowed to do. You can also, because it doesn't violate the Brown Act, buddy up with somebody. If we're on the same commission, I could buddy up here and we could talk freely within private to learn about a subject, debate the subject, ask questions of each other. We're not going to collude, that would be against our norms, but we can discuss items and then we bring our own independent analysis to the given meeting to cast our vote. What I did want to say though is that in terms of the city budget, it's really important for everybody. I agree with the comments here. It's important for you to understand even the basics of our budget, the scale of it. You know, are we a $500 million city? Are we a $100 million city? Who are we? And then also understand that a lot of the things that get done in our city aren't just done by the city because they don't have any money, to be honest. With wealthy residents, we don't have a wealthy city because of the comment before about tax bases. A lot of our residents are sitting on very low tax rates for their homes. They don't pay a lot of tax revenue. We don't have a lot of businesses. We don't have a lot of transitory tax, et cetera, et cetera. We can get grants, and also you guys can do partnerships. So a lot of nonprofits will do partnerships with the city, public-private, to bring capital money, or even just implementation money to join with the city. The museum is a perfect example. The city throws money to us every year to help with our operations, but we depend on donors as well. I'm putting my museum hat on for a moment. We depend on donors as well. The theater will probably not get done out of the capital budget. It will be done primarily out of private donations and institutional donations. So it's very much when you live in a city like ours, it's all about collaboration. And as a volunteer, if you ever join a commission, you may have the ability to direct some money, but your other role is to also, within the legislative rules you have to follow, advocate for public-private partnerships when they come to you as in a formal way, because it's the only way we really can exert more power than we can afford.
Other questions? Who has a question that hasn't asked one yet? In any of our sessions?
Rachel, did we answer your question? I think your question was about how do we communicate the work we're doing and things of that nature, right?
In part, I actually learned a lot in the tangents that we went on, so I appreciated it. But it would be nice to know, like, you know, I watched the city council meeting with the park discussion, but I don't think most of the residents did. And so how do you kind of get that information out there?
Pop-ups. So
Talk to pop-ups.
I mean, so I'll speak for my commission, and there's the notes, of course, but there are the meeting notes, but those are often quite thin. You're not going to get much from it. And one thing I have realized within ourselves that we're not great. We don't have like the power to force the city to say, great, create a summary of this and like post it on the website so people can read through and like see here's the details of the real meeting notes. And then even like public comment, it doesn't get, it's like, you know, loosely tracked. So I wish that the other commissioners do as well, that we had a place where like, oh, great, requests were made for safety improvements on these intersections, or changes to these road geometries, or striping, or, you know, bus lines through the city. And it's not well tracked for us, and it's something that we're aware of, but we only have so much impact to tell city staff how to do their job, right? They have a job, and there's this relationship that could be, you know, very mutually beneficial or adversarial, depending, or like, you know, wanting someone to do something that they don't want to have to do. So in the end, we don't have something great for our commission. Maybe other commissions do. So
I'll leave it there. Yeah, I'll just say that, for the planning commission, like, a week before the meeting, staff will typically send out the agenda and a staff report. So every item usually has a staff report by staff. And it kind of clearly outlines, this is, you know, the 8-story project, and this is why, you know, they're asking for this and this, and it's very detailed. And so I think if residents, you know, read that before the meeting, then they'll have some kind of understanding of why the project has to be approved and why, you know, what the discussion points could be. As far as that, I mean, staff is very accessible in my experience, so just emailing them and asking them questions about an agenda item, I think always helps. I think early on as a commissioner, I would go on Nextdoor to kind of interact with neighbors. I quickly learned that was a bad idea, so I don't do that anymore. But yeah, so unfortunately there isn't a way to, I guess, spread that information other than kind of the staff reports, I would say.
It depends on the commission. So I've been on, I'm now on the second commission, my first commission, which was a park commission. What we would do is we would coordinate with staff, because you can't ever get ahead of staff. And you certainly can't get ahead of the council. But what you can do is outreach. You can do outreach. What's important to you? So you can hold pop-ups. You can hold a community event sponsored by the park commission. And, you know, you want to do some community outreach and find out what's on your minds. And it has to be open-ended. You can't hold a debate on a topical legislative subject that staff hasn't reported out on. That would be inappropriate. Even if you know about it, it would be inappropriate. Because we serve the pleasure of the council, and we serve in coordination with staff. And also they have to be the lead on anything legislative, even because they run the city, right? Council on the strategic side, the leaders, the strategic leaders, the city manager, and everybody that reports to them, including the police, are the staff, and they run the city. So, but we can do outreach, general outreach. You can also have, declare office hours if you'd like, commissioner or city council member, they can do that. Then you can come have a conversation with a commissioner. I've had many of those with members that are worried about this or that and the other thing, or just want to understand what's on the horizon. There I have to be very fuzzy, because sometimes I don't know what's on the horizon. But we know our work plan for the year, and we can talk about those things. And then if you're part of the formal process, take the dog park. The city ran all the outreach, right? They would host the pop-ups, they would host the outreach sessions, they would host the training sessions. They had the architects come in. They spent 2 years getting public input. And it was really important, optional, but really important for the commissioners to be present. Of our commissions, there were 2 or 3 of us that were very faithful in showing up. And it really allowed us to understand the community sentiment long before the decisions came in to play at the council level. The problem was that, remember I said earlier, same people show up again and again. Turned out that a lot of people, even though we had 2 years of pop-ups, they never came to a pop-up. They didn't know we were building a dog park, even though it was in the town crier every other month. And then we run into trouble at the very end. So one of the things every Los Alton that is in the LEAD class should walk away from this program, regardless of the cohort, is to make sure that you inform all your neighbors that things happen in the city, and they're not going to be successful if they come in at the 11th hour. They have to be there for the 2 to 3 years that it takes to do anything in the city. That's when you give your input. And I know that I'm always on the bully pulpit about that.
How many of you know what the city's goals are for this year? So the city council does goal setting once a year and decides what their focus is going to be. And it's based on those goals that they then give instruction to each of the commissions and councils to try to achieve those goals. So here's a relevant question that is really good, particularly if you look it up, to ask the council, well, how does this particular action you're considering tonight satisfy your goals that you have stated? And if they don't have a good answer for you, you should demand one. because that's what they're supposed to be doing, is keeping with their goals. So that's at another higher level, and that's done usually about once a year, different ways of doing that. Sometimes I'll do a little offsite to try to get